What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more Simple Minds. And we're returning to the 1979 album Real Cacophony. Thank you again to Phil for providing the larger catalog here. And the next track is Citizen, and then parenthetically Dance of Youth, which is an interesting juxtaposition. Citizen, the resident of a city in a literal sense. In more modern times, it typically means to be a resident of a particular nation state or a province or state or particular smaller geographical unit therein, and all the rights and or characteristics that may entail. At the same time, Dance of Youth seems to suggest not only some kinetic activity or exuberance. I suppose it doesn't literally have to be a dance, it could be a figurative term, but in relation to a young mindset and or energy level relative, at least implicitly, to older demographics and perhaps the loss of that enthusiasm and energy. So Citizen, Dance of Youth, I don't quite know what to make of that. Admittedly, I may not be able to pick up on all the words anyway, but yes, it's an interesting pairing of a regular title and a parenthetical subtitle. So I'll see what I can catch on a first listen. This is, I was going to say Strung Out, which is a punk band I listen to. It is in fact Simple Minds from Real Cacophony 1979, and the track is Citizen, Dance of Youth. Insane. You know, I mentioned as we were going through Life in a Day, there were multiple points where I was thinking of Roxy music. This one reminded me maybe of the earliest Japan material, which I've been going through recently, and which is notably different from material they made in the years following that. And a couple folks have commented on the early Japan stuff that there's a sneer, a bit of a defiant attitude to their tracks, along with some zany sonics, and there's some funk in there, and some rhythms and stylings that are very distinct from later music by them. This sounded like maybe a little bit of early Japan, a little bit of Adam and the Ants, which I already reacted to in this same batch, in that it had a bit of a dissonant tribal feel to it. Excuse me, my voice is dying here. But it definitely had a frenetic and percussive intensity, like, you know, the snare, double snare, and everything was like stop-start, very herky-jerky and up and down, where like you didn't feel like it was flowing, which is fine, there's nothing wrong with that, but it definitely felt like it was meant to make me feel a bit off balance or off guard in terms of, you know, what to expect. So definitely an intensity and an eccentricity to the composition. It was, I don't know, like tribal art rock. I'm trying to think of a phrase that characterizes what I just heard. Lyrically, I know even less of what's going on. I will comment there were layered vocals, including, I think, lead vocals where a new line would start before the previous one had done. So I don't know if Kerr's vocals were layered specifically or if that was just another member of the band, you know, providing backing vocals, but in a way that was overlapping with the lead vocal. But okay, so we heard reference to like a loss of communication. Oh, there was a couple other tidbits or snippets of lines that I caught. Certainly that line of, what was it, making love to our sisters or something like that. So I don't quite know how to reference or how to interpret that. If we're talking about citizens or maybe non-citizens doing that, perhaps it is an us and them type of perspective, but it didn't necessarily feel like that way in the other lines that I caught. So yeah, I really don't know what to make of the narrative or the scene that's being painted, other than to say it feels as eccentric or all over the place zany as the Sonics themselves. So again, even relative to Life in a Day, this feels quite different, and definitely relative to the soundtrack type soundscapes of the like very early 80s stuff, as well as the more epic like synth rock sounds of the middle 80s stuff that I got to. So in terms of sheer diversity of sound over a relatively small period of time, I feel like Simple Minds might be the most dynamic group I've heard yet, or that I'm deep diving on. In any case, I enjoy the unabashed creativity and unique character of their work at this point, even if it's not the most sonically consonant or, you know, catchy of the material from them I've heard. But yes, clearly they started in a vein that was off on their own, despite it, again, sounding a bit like Roxy Music or a bit like some other groups that I've gone through, which I think that's more my brain just liking to make associations and comparisons, and less that they may have been, oh, you know, let's sound like that, or, you know, let's do something similar to what this group did. It really feels like they were beginning in a very unique or off the beaten path type of place, which is interesting because I've heard some of the criticism of their mid-80s stuff is that they were trying to sound a bit too much like U2, or they were going a bit too much for that like stadium synth rock type of sound, which again, my evaluation of that is still preliminary, and at best I'll just say that I enjoyed the stuff from, I think 86 was the farthest ahead album that I reacted to. But yes, ultimately it is interesting to hear different opinions about a group's evolution, and even if there are varying opinions in that way, I've enjoyed pretty much everything I've heard from them, even if it is quite different. So looking forward to going through the rest of this album. Let me know what you think of this tune. I will see you next time. Peace.